Whither Are We Traveling? That's the title of this piece from 1963 about North American Freemasonry. But, it feels surprisingly relevant today.
It really does. The person who annotated it recently, in 2024, even called it, well, almost prophetic.
So for this deep dive, we're looking into this essay. It's by Dwight L. Smith. He was a pretty big deal, a former Grand Master and Grand Secretary in Indiana.
Exactly. Whither Are We Traveling? Written, over 60 years ago now? And these new annotations really drive home how much his observations still hit the mark.
And for you listening, this isn't just some, dusty old document.
Not at all.
The annotator argues pretty convincingly, I think, that Smith's analysis of leadership, standards, education, the whole purpose of the organization, it was incredibly sharp.
And that the concerns he raised back then, they've only intensified.
Right. So our mission here is to unpack those key concerns, those insights from Smith's essay.
Understand the context, sure, but also think about what his perspective from 1963 can tell us about, challenges facing all sorts of groups today.
Okay, let's get into it. Smith kicks things off with a really direct question, doesn't he? He asks, basically, can Freemasonry keep its prestige if the leadership isn't up to scratch?
And his answer is a pretty clear no. He puts leadership right at the center. The absolute most significant factor, he says, in any decline of interest.
Yeah, he believed it was the make or break thing.
He even tells that story about the teacher who was thinking of joining.
Oh.
But he saw a master of a lodge just doing a terrible job, and it completely turned him off.
Wow.
Because in that moment, that one master, he represented the whole fraternity, It shows just how visible that role is.
It really does, like the public face. And Smith, he gets pretty critical about how people moved up the ranks.
Mm-hmm. The automatic promotion idea.
Yeah, like you just get promoted because you showed up, not because you actually have leadership skills or you know the rituals that well.
Right. He points out the only real requirement to become master was, having been a warden before that. Not much else needed.
So what did he think a master should be doing then?
Well, his focus was on providing, and this is his phrase, good and wholesome instruction. Real leadership.
Okay.
Even if the ritual wasn't perfect, he felt that inspiring leadership, that actual guidance, was way more important than just reciting lines perfectly.
That's interesting. So for you listening, think about that. Does that idea resonate?
Yeah.
Leadership being the core solution.
Yeah.
Have you seen that in other groups you're part of?
Where strong leadership makes a difference, or, weak leadership just causes interest to fizzle out.
Good question. Okay, so then Smith moves on to membership. The West Gate, he calls it.
Right, the entrance, symbolically.
And his question is sharp. How well are we guarding the West Gate? He's worried.
Yeah, worried that maybe too many people were getting in just because they could afford the dues.
Not based on their character.
Oh.
Or their standing in the community.
Exactly. He felt the focus had shifted. It used to be about attracting community leaders, but now, he implies the standards might have slipped.
He talks about a whispered complaint about that.
Mm-hmm. And he connects it possibly to economic pressure, needing money to keep the buildings up. Maybe that led to focusing more on numbers than quality.
And he doesn't hold back on the investigation committees either, does he?
No, he criticizes just grabbing whoever's at the meeting to check out potential members. Like, are they actually good judges of character? Do they even know how to investigate properly?
He contrasts that with someone from Tennessee.
Yeah, this Tennessee stalwart who thought a healthy group should actually reject a decent number of applicants, maybe like 20%.
Whereas Indiana's rate was much lower.
Right. Implying maybe they weren't being selective enough, or maybe they were afraid of saying no.
It makes you think, doesn't it? For any group you're in, how important is that selectivity? Does it help maintain quality?
Definitely something to consider.
Okay, next point.
Yeah.
Smith asks, has Freemasonry become too easy to obtain?
The value proposition. His argument is that if it's too easy to join, maybe people don't value it as much.
Right, like if you don't have to work for it.
He gives that historical context too. Fees used to be like a month's wages.
Wow.
But by 1963, maybe just a week's pay, or even less sometimes. He compares it to other clubs, service clubs and things, suggesting Freemasonry was kind of underselling itself.
And it wasn't just the money, was it? It was the speed, too.
Exactly. Rushing candidates through the degrees. For convenience, maybe, but not focusing on if they actually understood it or became proficient.
You mentioned courtesy work being abused.
Yeah, where someone could technically become a full master mason without ever really attending their own lodge, just getting the degrees done elsewhere. And he even talks about the well-meaning father syndrome, dads wanting to fast-track their sons, sometimes bending the rules.
So all this, he felt, was cheapening the whole experience.
Pretty much. Which leads to the question for you, the listener. Does making something easier to get always make it more valuable? Or can it sometimes, dilute the engagement?
Good point. Then he shifts to lodge size. Are we not worshiping at the altar of bigness? That's his question.
Yeah, he was worried about this trend towards massive impersonal lodges. He felt it killed the fellowship, the individual connection.
You become just a number.
Right. And he uses stats, comparing U.S. lodge sizes to places like Canada or the UK, where they were generally smaller.
And those smaller lodges didn't have the same attendance problems.
Apparently not, according to Smith. He argued these huge U.S. lodges wasted leadership potential. Hundreds of capable guys with no real chance to step up.
And for new members.
No meaningful roles, nothing to really grab onto, so they drift away. He even used the term closed corporation.
Ouch. Like you walk in expecting fellowship and just find this big, impenetrable group.
Exactly. It really makes you think about group size, doesn't it? How does the scale of any group affect that sense of community, that feeling that you can contribute something?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, what's next? The subdivision into other organizations.
His question. What can we expect when we have permitted Freemasonry to become subdivided into a score of organizations?
His worry was that all these related groups, these appendant bodies, were actually weakening the main thing, the basic craft lodge.
He called it a sponge-like growth, competition for members' time, their money, their energy.
And it created a perception problem.
Yeah, that the basic Blue Lodge was somehow less important, just a stepping stone to get into these other groups, these higher degrees or whatever.
So loyalty gets diluted.
Right. People identify more with the subgroup than the parent body. He even mentioned the vanishing emblem.
Oh yeah, leaders not even wearing the main symbol, the square and compass.
And he really didn't like the superiority sales talk where Masons would basically badmouth the lodge to promote these other bodies.
That sounds counterproductive.
Absolutely. It's a challenge for any big organization with lots of branches, isn't it? How does the core stay strong and keep its identity when there are so many offshoots pulling people in different directions?
True. Okay, next up, Masonic charity.
His question here. Has the American passion for bigness and efficiency dulled the spirit of Masonic charity?
So he saw a shift away from personal giving.
Yeah, from that sort of direct personal help to more organized institutional charity.
He mentioned the box of fraternal assistance.
Right, an older tradition where members could contribute directly at meetings. He contrasts that with just paying a set amount per person each year, a per capita tax that goes to larger funds.
And he saw that as lazy.
Maybe lazy is a strong word, but he definitely criticized relying on just writing checks instead of getting personally involved. Acts of kindness, support in the community.
He gave that example from Missouri, where a leader pushed for more personal charity.
And it had a positive effect, he said. He also quotes a senior warden saying he joined to contribute to the relief of poor, distressed master masons, and then asks, is that just lip service now?
It's a really interesting point about charity itself. What's the right balance? Big donations versus personal acts.
And which one actually has a bigger impact? For the giver and the receiver. Lots to think about there.
Definitely. All right, next is the festive board. Fellowship.
Do we pay enough attention to the festive board? Smith asks. This is about the social side, the meal or gathering after the meeting.
And he felt this was declining.
Yes, and that its decline really weakened the bonds between members. Real fellowship was being lost.
He points to history, right? Early lodges prioritizing these feasts.
Even in hard times, yeah. He quotes H.L. Haywood describing 18th century lodges where the meal was absolutely central. It's where the community was really built.
Why did he think it declined?
He suggests maybe a kind of Puritan influence, a sort of negative view of just having a good time together.
Interesting.
He contrasts it with Freemasonry elsewhere. And he also saw a clash with the service club mentality, maybe bringing in entertainment that wasn't really fitting for the Masonic context.
He even quotes Robert Burns, doesn't he, about the deep fellowship in his lodge.
He does. It really underscores the emotional connection that these shared social times can build. So for you listening, how important are those kinds of rituals, those shared meals or gatherings, in building strong bonds in your communities?
Yeah, it's fundamental, isn't it? Okay, 8th point, Masonic education.
Smith asks, what has become of that course of moral instruction, veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols, that Freemasonry is supposed to be?
So he felt education had become Just memorization.
Pretty much. Rote learning, not real understanding or, personal growth. He felt it had become a liability, actually.
He tells a story about using a specific book himself.
Yeah, when he was a young master, using Carl Claudy's book and how it really sparked meaningful discussion, real Masonic instruction.
So he saw problems at both the top level and the local level.
Exactly. At the Grand Lodge level, too many different systems, maybe amateurishly designed programs, often just long and dull materials.
And in the local lodges?
Instruction just wasn't a priority. Rushing through things, maybe using stunts instead of real teaching.
He stresses that light should come from the east, right? Meaning the master.
The master should be the teacher. Proficient, able to guide the members. He suggests making learning a privilege, something enjoyable, maybe done during the social time, the hour of refreshment.
It ties back to leadership again, really.
It does. So thinking about any group trying to pass on complex ideas or inspire deeper understanding what works best, Smith clearly felt going beyond rote learning was key.
Absolutely. Okay, second to last. Lowering of standards, tied to the century of the common man.
Right. Hasn't the so-called century of the common man contributed to making our fraternity a little too common? That's his provocative question.
He's arguing that trying to appeal to everyone led to letting standards slip.
In dress, in behavior, even in how the rituals were performed. Yeah. He uses that phrase, Masonic Gresham's law, like bad money driving out good bad practices, push out good ones.
He gives examples.
Oh, yeah. Inappropriate clothes, sloppy aprons, guys putting hats on the Bible, just boorish behavior during degree work, things that showed a lack of respect.
His point being you need to respect the setting, the traditions.
Yeah. Just like you would in a church or any other solemn place. He even brings up the instructions given to new members about spotless cleanliness of their garments, symbolizing their intentions. Details matter.
It's always a balance, isn't it? Maintaining standards without being, stuffy or exclusionary.
For sure. How do standards affect how a group is perceived and the respect it commands? It's a tough question for any tradition.
Definitely. Okay, his final point. This feels like the core message.
Are there not too many well-meaning brethren who are working overtime to make Freemasonry something other than Freemasonry?
Basically, stop trying to imitate other groups and get back to what Freemasonry actually is.
Exactly. He lists all these things he sees as gimmicks, outright solicitation for members, trying to act like a service club, aggressive fundraising, taking political sides.
Things he felt were totally missing the point.
Right, because Freemasonry, he argues, gained its prestige despite not doing those things. Its real aim is different.
Individual moral improvement.
Leading to community improvement. Quietly. The still small voice, he says. Making good men better, one by one. That's the timeless purpose.
He quotes Dean Roscoe Pound near the end.
Freemasonry has more to offer the 20th century than the 20th century has to offer Freemasonry. A powerful statement.
Smith's own concluding question is just.
Why do we not try it? Meaning, why don't we try practicing actual traditional Freemasonry? And he ends with Robert Burns. Dare be honest and fear no labor.
Wow. Quite a call to action, even 60 years later.
It really is. His whole essay is this plea to focus on fundamentals. Quality over quantity, depth over superficiality, genuine connection over, just imitating others.
The concerns about leadership, membership standards, losing sight of the core purpose, chasing trends, they seem pretty universal for organizations trying to last.
Absolutely.
So, bringing it back to you listening to all this, Smith's analysis from 1963, how do these challenges play out today?
That tension between tradition and modernity, quality versus quantity, the need for individual engagement. You probably see echoes of this in groups you know.
And thinking about that annotator in 2024, if Smith's fears have largely come true, as the annotator suggests.
What are the right course corrections now in the 21st century? Is it always about returning to the past?
Or is there a way to adapt, to evolve, while still holding on to those core values?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Definitely something worth mulling over.